Hello and welcome. I'm Darren, and today we're going to talk about a subject that is becoming increasingly frustrating across the PC, the tech landscape, and that is the misinformation, disinformation, which is breeding a new war of PC fanboyism, which is, I'd say it's out of control at this point. And it's going to get worse. And the reason it's going to get worse is because everything that's been argued about over the last year is going to change again for what a lot of people will see as the worst aspects going into this next generation. And we've seen that already. So obviously, anyone that's been in the PC tech space for the last couple of years will have gone through the upscaler arguments, the raster arguments, the VRAM arguments, the fake frame arguments, and you'll be aware of the way that all of these things have played out. And it's caused by fanboys. Let's face it. It's caused by the AMD fanboys. It's caused by the Nvidia fanboys. And then they become some kind of tribal cult where they all live in some sort of echo chamber and they constantly repeat something that someone has said and they take it as honest truth. And sometimes these people just don't understand, they don't actually know what they're saying, which is where it becomes uninformative to people that just want to get to the bottom of understanding what they want to buy, and maybe what will suit them. And whilst you can take a lot of it's banter, and that's fine, obviously, I don't know. When I came over to the PC space, I started building PCs. And I joined a lot of groups, like the Tech Power Up groups, some Facebook groups, stuff like that. I was quite active on Facebook at the time with a Facebook page and stuff like that. So I joined a lot of groups. And when I first started, kind of COVID era, none of this, I'm not going to say none of this, but a lot of this, what's going on now, didn't exist. Now basically go on 3 years forward and I cannot open any of those groups now where it's not just AMD versus Nvidia or AMD versus Intel, whatever it is, just bullshit. The entire page that's it. It's just arguing, tit for tat bickering, someone coming out with some bullshit statement, someone else arguing the bullshit statement, and it's there's a point when just some of it is like obvious banter. There's a point when some of it is not banter anymore, and the problem is you see a lot of people that are new to PC, they're coming to these groups, they don't understand a lot of what's getting said, and then you'll get a lot of people that are repeating something that some obviously ultra fanboy has said, and they have no idea what they're saying. So, like I said, the problem is this generation, it's about to get worse. And it's about to get worse because we are clearly, as you've seen, certainly with Nvidia, AMD, we still don't know what's happening. We'll talk about that in a minute. I've been kind of looking at a few things and thinking something doesn't add up with what AMD are saying to me right now. And there's reasons that I'm thinking that. And that's fine. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I actually think AMD are coming out with more than what they're saying. But we'll go through that in a bit. But obviously we've been through in the last couple of years the upscalers, how they've destroyed PC gaming, how raster was king and everyone wants raster back. If you want raster, AMD is the GPU to have, because AMD's raster performance destroys Nvidia. Nvidia are nothing without upscalers. And then you've got obviously the arguments DLSS versus FSR. The people that say DLSS is better are paid Nvidia shills. They're taking GPUs off Nvidia to create these lies that DLSS is better than FSR. We've all seen those. frame generation, fake frames, bad fake frames. Nvidia came out with frame generation. It was bad. It was the worst thing. It was destroying the industry. AMD copied. They came out with frame generation, which is arguably, actually, I don't know. It's awkward to say, is it better? It will give you more performance. Is it better? I don't know. People can argue that one. It's a matter of taste, I suppose, what they want from each one. There are downsides to both. There are upsides to both. AMD came out with frame generation. Suddenly it wasn't the curse of PC gaming. Suddenly frame generation was good. It was no longer fake frames. I think probably when AMD came out, and people will argue that it's better than Nvidia, suddenly it's the best thing in the world. Obviously, AMD came out with fluid motion frames, which is, a lesser attempt at frame generation, but obviously a frame generation which is obviously usable in all or most games and circumstances. Sometimes I believe it works okay. I've tried it a few times. I wasn't overly impressed with it, but that's just me. I've heard a lot of people say they really like it. Those same people are now vocal about how, again, Nvidia has destroyed gaming and the fake frame things is coming out already from the same people that have been blowing the smoke up fluid motion frames ass are now saying that Nvidia is fake frames again. So it's coming, and it is banter, or some of it's banter, but the problem is some people don't believe that, and some people don't understand that. Obviously, people have to understand, and it's a hard thing to take, but in the PC landscape, you don't have a huge amount of brands until you're talking, obviously, your peripherals, if you know what I mean. But as far as it goes, you've got AMD, you've got Nvidia, and you've got Intel. There's not a lot going on there. So people will buy a product, and people will then go and find validation for their product in people that want to tell them that their product is the best product, and those people also have that product, which is why they're telling them the product that they have is the best product. They want that validation, and that's fine. I understand that. But those people are in a position where they don't know if they're right or wrong. And I've said it before, it's not easy. It's not just an easy answer to something is the best. It doesn't work like that. These products aren't identical products. So what's best for someone else won't be best for me. And what's best for me won't be the best for someone else. I will never tell someone, buy this, it's the best for you. What I will say is, give me all of your examples. And if they line up with what works out best for me, then maybe what's best for me might be best for you. If you want all the same things that were the best things, that worked out the best things for me, if that makes sense. So obviously I've just gone through the last generation. I've had Intel CPUs, I've had AMD CPUs, I've had Nvidia GPUs, and I've had AMD GPUs. And I have been through all of the arguments, comments. I read a lot. Obviously, this YouTube channel is kind of... The whole reason this YouTube channel came out is because I was watching a lot of content on YouTube, and I've seen a lot of content creators jumping on the back and saying things that I just did not agree with. And so I ended up, basically, I wanted a voice that was longer than a comment, because comment sections... You can take a comment. Anyone can read a comment in a different way. If you want to take a comment negatively, you can read that comment negatively, and it never really helps anyone. So I obviously created this YouTube channel because I wanted to have more of a voice on that. So FSR4, well, let's say, okay, Nvidia came out. We don't know what happened with AMD at the show. People can speculate. At the time, I thought, okay, AMD are just doing their normal thing. Somehow someone gave AMD the wrong slot, and AMD had to price their GPUs before Nvidia got there, and AMD just refused to do this. And this is one thing that I find again, probably a little bit annoying, that AMD will always be seen as the savior of gaming because they are the cheaper option. This was the one opportunity to actually work out how cheap are AMD? How cheap are AMD when they're in a position that they go to the table first and they say, this is the price of our GPUs? Or are they just selling you GPUs that are cheaper than what they would actually sell them if Nvidia weren't around? You know, if Nvidia said this generation, we're not launching a GPU, and AMD come out now with, let's say, the 9070 XT, and they come out at $549. That's their price now. Now, if Nvidia brought nothing this generation, no GPU to be seen, does that GPU come out at $549, or does that GPU come out at $700? Because you can praise that company as much as you want, but it's the undercutting company. And that's not... This isn't about me about to go into a personal attack on AMD. I like my AMD GPU, but it has its flaws, and hopefully those flaws are about to get sorted out. We'll wait and see. But this is the constant, like, I read this all the time. We don't know. We don't know how caring AMD are about gamers because they give us this cheaper GPU. They give us a cheaper GPU on the back of what Nvidia priced their GPUs at. Let's be honest. If you can't see that, I can't help you. But I've been in this PC space for the 6000 series, for the 7000 series, and then I'm here for the 9000 series. And AMD are yet to actually put a price of a GPU before Nvidia's. They are always reacting to Nvidia's. I'm not saying that they're bad. I'm not saying Nvidia is great. This isn't that argument. This is basically saying you're saying that the company that undercutting are doing it because they care about you. No, they're just undercutting the other company. They're undercutting the other company because the other company is the company that has the market share, and they want to get some market share back from that company. The way for them to do it is to undercut them in price. You need to see it that way. If you don't want to see it that way, that's fine. You can carry on in your bubble of thinking that it's something different. But I think we all know that, obviously, if you take any look at AMD in the CPU space, they're not a savior of the cheapest product in the CPU space because they don't have to be. They're ahead of Intel. There's no reason for them to have to undercut Intel. They're ahead. They're more expensive than Intel. Their motherboards are normally at least 100 quid more than a equivalent of an Intel motherboard, and their CPUs, I haven't looked, but obviously I bought a 7800X3D, I don't know, a year ago for I think I ended up paying something like 280, 270, 280. I'm now looking at like £400, so that goes to show what happens when a product becomes a market leading product. The prices go up. Now, I'm not saying that CPU is not worth it. It is the best gaming CPU, or obviously the newest version to the 9800X3D is, but that goes to show that when a product leads the market, the product doesn't have to undercut anything that doesn't perform as well as it anymore. And then that's when you get a realistic idea of how that company wants to price their products. So I'm not in any kind of illusion in thinking that if AMD had market share over Nvidia and if AMD produced the best product, I believe it would be the most expensive product. I don't believe that AMD are going to overtake Nvidia with a product and then sell it for less. If people think that, that is more to you. Like, I wish that's the way the world worked, but I don't see a world that works that way. But anyway, regardless. So prices are out of the way, which is, to me, one misconception. So Nvidia did their thing, and obviously, probably not something that I expected. Nvidia came in cheaper on prices, but Nvidia came up with this, which seems to be where Nvidia are getting most of their performance. I'm not sure how much performance in actual, let's say, raw performance, raster performance. I'm not sure where Nvidia are this generation. I'm going to be certainly waiting to see the benchmarks. I didn't get anything off that makes me think that there's a huge advance in raw performance. Now, I believe that they probably have more in it, which is a normal Nvidia tactic. Not something that I particularly like, but they're a company. I don't have to like it, I just need to understand it. So I would imagine that Nvidia have probably more power available than maybe what we're getting right now. Now, whether they're holding something back for a reaction to what AMD do, I don't know. Or whether they're holding something back that they can give us a huge leap in the next generation if they have to battle with AMD harder when the UDNA, I believe it's UDNA launches. Now, maybe Nvidia are holding something on the table, and maybe they will put that all into the next generation if they believe that AMD might be coming back harder next generation. Maybe they're going to wait and see if AMD are, playing poker with them this generation, and maybe they're going to come out with a 5090 Ti, a 4080 Ti, and a Ti or a Ti Super or a Ti I Super, whatever it is that Nvidia do. Again, not something that I particularly agree with, but maybe they're just holding something back, because it doesn't look like, to me, on face value, a huge leap forward in rasterized performance. However, how far can we go with raster performance? And that is the next argument, because Nvidia obviously came forward with this frame generation, and that's stoked the fake frames argument again. And I don't know how to take it. Now, frame generation, to me, is probably... it's the least of my... let's say, if I buy Nvidia, and if I run Nvidia, the biggest reason for me to run an Nvidia GPU is because of DLSS. Using DLSS has allowed me to go to 4K. Now, I am a person that puts visuals ahead of anything. As long as I can get 60 FPS and I can get my 4K visuals and I can crank them as high as I can to get everything looking as good, 60 FPS is fine for me in those games. Those type of games. So DLSS has allowed me to do that. I wouldn't be able to do that on a 4080 at 4K without DLSS. And people say, okay, well, you shouldn't be using that GPU for 4K. Well, you wouldn't be able to do 60 FPS in every game at 4K with a 4090 if it wasn't for DLSS. You can't do it with any GPU on this market that you can buy right now without the use of an upscaler. And it's as simple as that. Now, for me, on a 4K screen, I have a huge visual advantage, or for me personally, I have that visual advantage to go to 4K because of DLSS. Because when I go to 4K and it will knock me back to, say, 45 FPS, and then I throw DLSS at quality on, and I will hardly see any difference. Sometimes it might even look better. I hardly see any type of degradation that I think is actually worth caring about. And to be honest, I don't particularly that much even try to force myself to look for it, because at face value, it looks great. So a lot of the time you can go from, say, somewhere below 60 FPS. You might be 55, you might be 45, but that will take you up to 70 or 80. And the game looks great. And it looks better to me than if I was at 1440p native at 100 FPS. I'd rather be at 80 FPS than at native 1440p with 4K DLSS quality. Now, that is where the AMD GPU has let me down. It's not all the time, but there are times in these newer games when I've had to do a very similar thing, because the XTX and the 4080 are very similar to themselves in performance. They will both need, at 4K with ultra settings, they will both need an upscaler to get over that 60 FPS in a lot of the new games. And unfortunately for the AMD GPU, it has been let down by FSR. As soon as I've put on FSR at quality, I have noticed an instant visual degradation from what it was at native. I don't get that same impact when I'm using the Nvidia GPU. I'm just being honest. Now, the problem is, what I'm saying now has been echoed by so many people that have been running both GPUs. So not only is it's been echoed across the industry. So Hardware Unboxed, what advice do they give? Because I've heard so many times that Hardware Unboxed are AM or Nvidia shills. Okay. I don't know if anyone actually, you can take stuff how you can hear what you want to hear and you can ignore what you don't want to hear. But if you watched Tim's, is it Tim? I don't know, whichever one it is. Whichever the one was that was at CES, and he did his talk about what Nvidia had come up with just after Nvidia had done their 50 series announcement. Now, that isn't a person, by the way that he spoke about Nvidia, that is a Nvidia shill. I'm sorry, but if you actually listen to the stuff he's saying, I'd say he's actually very... I'm not going to say he's anti-Nvidia, because I've no doubt that he probably actually runs a Nvidia GPU, but the misconception is he'll run a Nvidia GPU because Nvidia will give him a free GPU. I think Hardware Unboxed make enough money that they'd buy their own GPUs, and if he would prefer to run an AMD GPU, I reckon he makes enough money that he'll just buy an AMD GPU. But when you actually hear him talking about the... Well, listen to it. Go and listen to it, and you tell me that that's a Nvidia shield, the way he actually talks about Nvidia, because I'm sorry, but I don't see that. But what they have said, and what they have echoed for the last year on Hardware Unboxed, Daniel Owen said it, Digital Foundry have said it, and they've all been thrown under a bus, is because they've all said, in their opinion, if you are trying to choose between buying an AMD GPU or a Nvidia GPU, the AMD GPU will give you better value. But if you want to, pay extra for the features, DLSS will give you, obviously, a better feature than what you're going to get with FSR. That's what they've said. And they've been thrown under a bus for saying that. They're not lying. And the people that are trying to discredit them for lying, I think is out of order. I mean, even like Vex. Has anyone watched Vex and thinks that Vex is a Nvidia shill? He said it again the other day. DLSS is awesome. He's like, yeah, I'd pay extra for DLSS. I don't understand why these people get attacked. Now, when these people come out, like they did, because FSR4 had a little bit of a teaser the other day. Digital Foundry went to see FSR4. Hardware Unboxed went to see FSR4. And what did Digital Foundry say? FSR4 looks great. Now, apparently, these people will now source. They will now source Digital Foundry as a source for saying FSR4 is great. The people that they said, do not listen to Digital Foundry, they are Nvidia shills and they are lying. Now they're a source, because now they've said FSR4 is great. And that's the problem. That's where misinformation comes and people don't understand. So there'll be loads of people that are echoing that FSR3 looked as good as DLSS, because everyone that said anything different, all these people in the industry that were saying different, they're lying, because some AMD fanboy somewhere has told them that it's a lie, and that FSR3 looks just as good as DLSS. You've been lied to. I'm sorry, you've been lied to. And you've been lied to about the same people that have said, like I got into I'm not going to say an argument, but I got into a discussion with someone the other day that was saying, oh no, I bought AMD because it's got way better raster performance than Nvidia. I'm like, what are you on about? It's got better raster performance. Where does it have better raster performance? Like, I don't understand what you're saying. It's got good raster performance. It doesn't necessarily have better raster performance. In fact, if you actually look into it, AMD actually has better upscaler performance. Like FSR gives you more performance than DLSS. AMD frame generation gives you more performance than DLSS frame generation. When it actually comes to raster performance, I'm not quite sure what they're going on about. So we'll take a look, because I don't want to not back up the things that I'm trying to say. So we'll go to the last. Let's go to the last benchmark of this year, because Indiana Jones didn't get one. I don't know if it just wasn't a popular game, or if it's because, unfortunately, Indiana Jones didn't have the same features on both GPUs. Why that was, I don't know. People say it was Nvidia did it because Nvidia destroying gaming. Maybe they did. I don't know. Maybe AMD. Maybe it just didn't work very well on AMD, and AMD said, "Look, don't put us in that because it's going to be a bad look for us." People need to understand this could go both ways. I don't know which way it went. I'm not. I don't want to get involved in it. It's whatever it is. But Tech Power Up, obviously, they run these benchmarks. They're easy to find. This is the last one they've done in 2024. So where is it? Where is this huge raster performance that AMD have? Someone needs to point this out to me, because benchmarks are in raster. Okay. Now, we have had in the last, couple of months, we have had benchmarks that are now involving upscalers. And this is where we're going to get into next, because I don't even know what's going to happen next year. Next year is going to be a hell of a nightmare. But so, tell me where this raster performance is. Am I missing something? Is there something that I don't see? Like 1440p. Where is this huge raster performance advantage that AMD have over Nvidia? I don't see it. I honestly don't see it. At 4K, I still don't see it. So these people are like echoing something that someone's told them, and they don't even understand. They don't know. And you almost get to the point of, holy shit, dude, did you just buy that GPU because someone told you that it's got a massive raster performance advantage, and you don't even know how to look up what a benchmark is? Because I don't know. I don't know if you've been had. What AMD has is a very good raster performance for its cost. There's no arguing on that. If you just want raster, if you refuse to use FrameGen and you'd refuse to use an upscaler, then okay, fair enough, go for it. Like, yeah, that makes sense. Save the money, go with the raster performance. But people are actually thinking that there's some sort of huge raster advantage. No, because people seem to have this misconception that the only way that these Nvidia GPUs are here or here or here is because they're using upscalers to do it. This isn't using upscalers. This is raster. So that's one thing that is awkward. Now, when we talking about, obviously, what's going to happen going forward in the next generation, I don't even, like, if the 50 series, big advantage of 50 series is this 3 times frame gen, 4 times frame gen, 5 times, whatever it is they're doing. Benchmarks are screwed now. So now we are going to be relying on people, and I don't even know how that's going to go. Because the only way that, like, realistically, how can you benchmark? Unless AMD were using the exact same thing. Because if this works, if this frame generation technology works, and I don't know, I don't know how. I honestly just don't know how it will work at the start compared to how it will work in another year's time. Could be completely different. Do I expect it to be amazing when it launches? Maybe not, but it depends how much Nvidia have been working on it, and it depends how much of a head start they've got on it, because they're using the current frame generation to pick up all the information that is going to make this newer frame generation work really well. But if it does work very well, then when you're now going into the next generation, where you might be obviously benchmarking a raster AMD GPU versus a raster Nvidia GPU, but no one on those 50 series GPUs is going to be running raster because the frame generation works so well. Where does that leave you? Because it leaves you with having to believe people. And when you've been told for the last 2 years that you cannot believe any of those people because they're paid shills, I don't know where you go with that. It's going to be an absolute nightmare. So all I can say to you is, like, realistically, take me for, well, whatever. You can take me as however you want to take me, but I don't believe that Hardware Unboxed, Daniel Owens, Vex, even Moore's Law is dead. I was listening to him the other day saying that he would pay extra for DLSS. over, and that guy is not a Nvidia shill. They were talking about AMD versus Nvidia and what they need to do. This is like 6 months ago, to change the landscape. And they all said the same thing, and I will repeat the same thing. AMD needed a better upscaler. It was letting them down. And even, Moore's Law is dead. Even he was saying that he would pay extra for DLSS. He said it's that much better, it is worth paying extra money for. So I haven't heard Hardware Unboxed or any of these content creators. They haven't told me, from what I'm concerned, a lie, because I've tried exactly what they've said, and what they've said, I believe they're right in saying. Now, that's up to the individual user. If you don't care, the problem is, if you're saying that you don't care about visuals, then you don't need to be using any of the upscalers, which is fine. But if you care about visuals, then you're going to be forced to agree with them, because unfortunately it is visual degrading. That is what it is. So I'm not looking forward to it, because I've seen how bad this year has been for the arguments and the counter arguments and the petty bullshit. I don't know where that's going to go. Now, as far as AMD, I don't know what AMD are doing, because it's funny that you see, obviously, a lot of kind of arguments about AMD not bringing a high-end GPU this generation. And I've noticed something in the last couple of days, and I'm thinking, this is interesting, because is this a mid-range GPU that AMD are bringing? What classes is a mid-range GPU? And we're going to go back to that now, and just because I was looking through Tech Power Up, and I'd already noticed this. I don't know where it was, but I'd noticed that this had come up already on, I think it was actually, no, so it was on the next series of GPUs. So I think the last generation, and I wanted to check this. So yes, this is the last generation. So this is the 7900 XT. And admittedly, the 7900 XT does have 3 8-pins, okay? And it would appear that this is the new XFX. So this is the 9070 series. I'm not sure if it said in here if it was the 70 or the 70 XT. I'm not sure even if they knew. But here we are again with these 3 8-pins. You don't get a low or a mid-range GPU that runs 3 8-pins. I'm just going to put that out there. 3 8-pin power. A GPU that uses 3 8-pins. Now, this might be on the low margin. It might be on the high margin. We don't know, because we haven't seen any benchmarks from AMD. So I don't know if this is something that AMD are trying to portray. They're only bringing a low end, and they're actually just lying about the whole thing. We'll wait and see. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure how that's a big advantage to them. I don't even know if Nvidia GPUs are even up for pre-order, but if they were up for pre-order, I don't know. People might have pre-ordered one off the back of CES because they thought, well, AMD is screwed. But anyway, you don't get 3 8-pins on a low, or I'd say not even a mid-range. I don't remember a mid-range GPU that runs 3 8-pins in any generation that I've just been running. So I don't know what to say here. I'm thinking now whether I know that they've made leaps, or they're talking about making a bit of a leap in RT performance. So I know that they're probably sacrificing some die space to dedicated ray tracing cores. They're probably dedicating some of the die space to AI cores. So where they're going to be, I don't know. Admittedly, I was looking through here, and the XT from last generation did have 3 8-pins. I believe the new the 9070 XT Tough Gaming, that has 3 8-pins. So I'm thinking they're at least XT. at least. I think that they're going to be what the original thing was. Maybe they will be between XT and XTX. So does that mean that they're coming mid? Is that mid-range? Because when it's got 3 8-pins on it, I don't think that's mid-range. I'm going to have to argue with that. 3 8-pin power GPU, to me, is not a mid-range GPU. Especially when you've got mid-range from last generation that are running on a single 8-pin. Like, you had some 4070s, which I'd say is a mid-range GPU. Those are running on a single 8-pin. So, I don't know. I don't know what to think about that, but I'm going to end it there, because if not, I'm going to go on for too long. But what I will say is, like I said, at the back of this video, you're going to be... This is probably more for people that are kind of buying a GPU from the next generation, maybe not so much into looking at all the technical specifications and all the rest of it, but there's going to be some wild misinformation, and you're going to have to... You're not... Benchmarks are just not going to tell you the story next generation. I don't know if AMD will... Maybe they are holding back a little bit because maybe they've seen what Nvidia are doing with this multi-frame generation, and they're probably thinking, holy shit, hold on, can we use our frame generation to do a similar thing? Can we do that quite quickly before? I don't know. I honestly do not know. But these GPUs now going into the next generation are going to be so centered around their leap in performance is using this, and this is not something that's going to be benchmarked, so you're going to have to take people's word for it. And I believe people, certainly in the tech space, that have been called Nvidia shills just because they've said a feature that is on Nvidia that is better, and they've been called Nvidia shills for it, I don't think helps anyone. To be fair, Tech Power Up and all the rest of it, you can imagine if they didn't say negative things about FSR 3, would you even be getting FSR 4? Like, would you even get it? And when you get FSR 4, the people that have argued about what, the way that FSR has been slagged off, you'll be thankful for it, because I'm going to be thankful for it. So I'm glad that those people have made it an industry thing that FSR 3, which we hardly actually really got, let's be honest. I'm grateful that they've actually made it well known, and they've voiced their opinions, and it's made AMD come out with FSR 4, because that will make my 7900 XTX, if it runs on that will make that GPU a lot better, and that could be the difference between me maybe not even using the 4080 ahead of it anymore. If FSR 4 is as good as DLSS, then I'm telling you now, my problem is going to be a hell of a lot bigger between which GPU I prefer between the XTX and the 4080, because to me, that upscaler has made the biggest difference in this last generation. So I'll leave it there, because if not, this is already going on too long. But yeah, let me know in the comments. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you think I'm wrong. I don't care. I haven't really got broad enough shoulders, but whatever, you know what I mean? I can take it. I can take what people think I'm wrong, but honestly, I think I'm concerned for the stuff that's been said in the industry this year and how that's going to go next generation, with the fact that benchmarks are not going to be reliable as a source of information on how these GPUs perform. They're not going to be able to benchmark unless they both had the exact same features. And if those features are going to be features that you will be heavily using and there's no way to benchmark those features, it's going to be really awkward, really awkward. So let me know, and I'll catch you in the next one.